Hey! It's Friday night and you are at home playing your favorite LOTRO class, the Champion. Maybe you are a bit like me. All your friends are raiding Hidden Horde Tier 4, but they won't take you, because you are just a champ. Just kidding, of course. I don't have any friends. Do you? Great. That's the first step in the right direction. Anyway, I am sitting here and have nothing else to do than to talk about my favorite class, so here we go. Let's talk about the Champion class and how to utilize it in the level 140 raid and endgame content, will we? I am focusing solely on yellow line here because it is much easier to get a hang of, plus yellow is the go-to spec for almost all content anyway. I was thinking, let's start with traits, virtues, legendary items, skills, and last but not least, rotation. So, Traitline. I will show you 3 different setups you can use. One is for Hidden Horde Tier 3 plus raid content, one is for things like Sword Haul or Thickle Gundu farm runs, and the third and most important one is for fighting the dummy till your hands hurt. Here you can see my standard yellow Traitline I use for the Hidden Horde raid. The keen eye may notice that I did not trait the wild attack crit buff. I will talk about this later in the skill section. The perks of this skill tree are that in combination with your sprint duration tracery you acquire an insane 48 seconds uptime on sprint with just 60 seconds cooldown. So you are fast as fuck boy, almost all the time. And you need to be fast. While all these hunters just stand around, shooting and laughing at you, you have to run to your targets. Sprint also grants slow immunity, in case you didn't know, which is unlikely, since Champ is your favorite class too. A very important trait is Champion's Advantage, which grants you 15% mitigation bypass for your blade skills. This is very strong for AoE fights, because chances are that not every ad is always down to 0 mitigations, but becomes less important for single boss fights. Every blade skill has a 20% chance to proc CA. The main reason for traiting targets is that Swift Strike becomes Swift Blade, a blade skill. Blade skills can proc CA, remember? All the other stuff is not really debatable. I mean, you can try, and on the internet you will always find someone to argue with you, so let me know if this tree sucks in your opinion. The second build that you see right here is used for sword hauls and other farming related stuff. Make sure to trait stuff like Sprint Cooldown, Blade of Courage and Killing Spree for survivability. The third and most important trait tree is the one I use for dummy fights. I trait all the good stuff for DPS, and ignored all the useless, survival stuff. If you ain't dying, you ain't trying, right? On a dummy Champion's Advantage becomes very important, and the outcome of your pass relies pretty heavily on how many CAs you can proc, and how many of your blade skills crit in those 12-second windows. You like RNG? Of course, Champ is your favorite class. A question that might arise in your brain could be, but John, why are we only traiting 1 point in deep strikes damage? It's a strong dot and we could use that extra DPS. Well, the answer to that is simple, because LOTRO, it's bugged, that's why. That is, by the way, an answer we will hear 1 or 2 times again. Virtues. For virtues I rely on wit, confidence, valor, fidelity and compassion. Those are the virtues with the best essence value. So it makes sense to build around these. Finesse should be around 650 to 700k, even higher if you are aiming for tier 5. But you know that, if you do so. Legendary items. Wow. They are simply a blessing from the SSG gods. So fun, so intuitive. They make you say, gosh, I love LOTRO, so glad the weapon swap is gone and they finally made the LI system less grindy. Anyhoodles. Here you can see my 2-hander and my rune. First things first. As word of power you really want single target crit and attack, AoE crit and attack. And dot attack. But why dot attack? Wouldn't dot crit be the better choice? Well yes, but it's LOTRO, it's bugged, that's why. Your words of mastery are pretty straightforward. The only real change you could make is to swap out the sprint tracery and replace it with either wild attack damage or feral strikes damage. But I wouldn't recommend it. Sprint is just too good. As a new player who doesn't have any gold traceries, I recommend you to upgrade your Battle Frenzy tracery and your Ferocious Strikes tracery first, cause the cooldown reduction of those skills has a big impact on your rotation. Don't use Horn of Gondor damage, that shit's whack. With the introduction of the new Word of Craft traceries and the new heraldries, you are now able to do exciting stuff, if you're a hunter. If you're a champ, you're fucked. I have a different approach to the heraldries than most champ players I've talked to, but hear me out. I am suggesting to use the heraldry of the lion, which grants you 3% crit chance as a 2-piece bonus and just pure crit stat as a 4-piece bonus. The ox heraldry offers better stats overall, so why am I slotting the lion 1? Because I don't need vitality. By running heraldries with higher mastery, I am able to slot more tactical mitigation essences. So if you don't care about vitality, heraldry of the lion is in my opinion the better choice. The remaining 2 Word of Craft slots can be used for the willpower set, which grants you 1.5% tactical mitigation as a 2-piece bonus, which is neat. One of the first questions new players always ask is, do I choose a 2-hander or dual wield? The answer to that is pretty simple. I don't like it either, but currently you are better off using a 2-hander for yellow because it is simply doing more damage. The animations of your skill suck, but for big dips, you need to make big sacrifices. Alrighty, any questions left? If so, feel free to DM me on Discord or leave a comment below. Let's get into the more important parts. Let's talk about skills. First of all, it's important to understand that the skills of champions can be separated into 2 types. There are blade skills and there are strike skills. Your strike skills are your single target skills from red line. Brutal strikes, ferocious strikes, feral strikes and wild attack. Brutal strikes is your number 1 damage skill, nothing comes close to it. Feral strikes removes corruptions and can be used as a filler in your rotation, but is not nearly as important as brutal or ferocious strikes. Alright, let's get it over with, the debate about wild attack. Last level cap, level 130, you trait wild attack, because it could be used with dual-wield weapons as a filler skill in your rotation. If you trait 5 points in red, wild attack grants you 5% crit chance for 10 seconds, if it crits. Now with weapon swap gone, the chances of a successful crit are cut in half with a 2-hander equipped. The most important part why I personally don't like to use wild attack anymore, is because every time I see its animation, I start to cry. There are good champion players that still use it, and it still has its value, it's just not as good as before. You can test for yourself if you like it, but keep in mind that you need to trait 5 points in the corresponding trait in red, to make it useful. More to that in the rotation section later. Blade skills are Swift Blade, Raging Blade, Blade Wall, Fury of Blades, Rend, Born for Combat and Blade Storm. Blade skills can trigger champion's advantage, remember that trait from earlier? Blade Wall is a super hard-hitting skill, even though it was nerfed for 25% a few months ago. Raging Blade is a really strong AoE skill that overtook Blade Wall due to its nerf in skill priority. Fury of Blades is another perfect example for a horrible animation. Other than that, it's a strong AoE skill which increases the crit damage of your AoE skills by 10% if you are wearing 4 pieces of the Hidden Horde Yellow Raid set. Swift Blade is an important skill. It has almost no animation, grants 1 fervor and can proc CA. Rend is a strong dot which stacks up to tier 5 and reduces the mitigation of the enemy by 5.5%. Born for Combat is not that important, and is never used in single target situations. Blade Storm is an AoE skill that costs 4 fervor and is never used in single target situations. In AoE situations it can replace brutal strikes if there is no prioritized target. As you can see, the tooltip states that it grants you minus 20% attack duration. Well, that sounds pretty neat, but please remember what game you are playing. Blade Storm grants you minus 20% attack duration if it crits, so far so good. But any other blade skill will proc this buff. Sounds stupid? Yeah, it is. But let's be happy that we don't have to press such a shitty skill as Blade Storm every 30 seconds. There are a few buffs and utility skills in the kit of the champion, let's have a look at them real quick. Great Cleave, Controlled Burn, Exchange of Blows, True Heroics and Fight On are your most important buffs. They offer an insane amount of DPS increase. Great Cleave increases your AoE damage by 25% for 41 seconds. Controlled Burn increases your melee damage, attack speed and fervor regeneration. Exchange of Blows reflects damage and grants you 38.5% mastery damage for 15 seconds. Fight On gives you 11% crit chance for 30 seconds. Combine it with the essence from Ringglow Veil to reset its cooldown. It adds another element of RNG, but we are used to that by now. True Heroics grants you 10% mastery damage for 12 seconds. Cooldown-wise it lines up with Great Cleave. The rest of your utility skills are pretty self-explanatory if you are able to read, which I hope you are. Bracing Attack is an insane heal, please don't nerf SSG. Champions Challenge is your taunt, which reduces the damage of your enemy multiplicative by 30%. It was widely used in 130 content, but not so much in the current endgame. Let's talk about rotation. There are two possible ways to approach the yellow champion. If you are a beginner, I would advise you to use a static rotation and practice it on a dummy to get the basics down. There is a solid static rotation on Moskins' channel, link down in the description. A more advanced approach would be to use your skills according to their priority. My skill priority for yellow looks like this. Brutal Strikes, Fero Strikes, Fury of Blades, Raging Blade, Blade Wall, Swift Blade, Rend, Feral Strikes, Wild Attack. Rend moves up the priority list if it's about to run out. A very important mechanic in LOTRO is the existence of immediate skills. An immediate skill is executed instantly when you press it and cuts the animation of the previous skill. The champion has 3 immediate skills, Battle Frenzy, Clobber and Blood Rage. We are using this mechanic to our advantage and cut the animation of Brutal Strikes and Ferocious Strikes. As you can see, if I use Fero Strikes, the animation takes a while, it performs all 3 hits, then the skill goes on cooldown. If I cut the animation with Battle Frenzy, Fero Strikes goes on cooldown instantly, while the full damage of the ability remains. This offers huge burst potential. You can bind Clobber on 2 different keybinds, and hit them simultaneously, this way Clobber costs no fervor and has no animation. This speeds up the animation cut process even further. Here you can see how I double tap Clobber. Choose 2 keybinds that you can easily press simultaneously. Q and E for example. Personally I use a button on my keyboard, and a button on my mouse to double tap it. See what works for you. The core of your rotation, whether you are using a static rotation or a more advanced one, is to cut Fero Strikes with Battle Frenzy and Brutal Strikes with Clobber. My advice would be to bind Battle Frenzy and Clobber to a mouse button. This way you can cut the animation even faster. After that keep your skills on cooldown, following the skill prioritization. Try to use Exchange of Blows before your Fero and Brutal Strikes combo to get 2 combos in the 15-second window of your Exchange of Blows damage buff. You will notice a gap where all your main skills are on cooldown. This is the place where a filler skill is needed. You can either use Wild Attack, Feral Strikes or Rend. Each approach has its pros and cons. On a dummy you might get the best results either with Rend, due to a higher CA proc chance, or Wild Attack, due to high crit luck and therefore more crit chance buff uptime. Choose a skill to your liking. This gap should also be used to reapply Fight On. I don't want to talk about plugins in this video, but I definitely recommend using them. I don't want this video to get extra long, so let me know if you are interested in a separate video where I talk about the plugins I use. You can find an example dummy pass on my channel. Or use Moskins static rotation. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comment or send me a DM on Discord.